My name is George Bina. I work for a company called Microsoft that produces Oxygen XML editor. Can you hear me, right? I'm curious if you know about what we do already. Yes? Do you work with XML? No? So Oxygen is a tool for helping people work with XML documents, both for development, that is defining schemas or DTDs to specify the structure of the documents, define business rules with schematron to constrain those documents to specific rules, writing scripts with XSLT to transform or process the documents, extract information from them, creating XQuery scripts to if you push the XML into a database, for instance, and so on. That's a part of what we are doing. Then another part is for authoring, creating XML content visually, helping users to discover some of the XML rules, even if they do not know them. We call that controlling the authoring experience, so you can allow them to discover what's available in a visual editor. Then we moved that visual editor also on the web by providing a browser-based editor, and I will show you some use cases for that, because that enables people to collaborate more easily. Then we moved to build on top of that web editor to allow people to involve others without any setup, let's say. And this is my focus for our today talk. Let's say you work on a document. You work with XML documents, and at some point, whatever workflow you have, you need to modify the XML content, right? So you have some steps: connect to a repository, maybe check out the content locally, or somehow you need to access that content. Then you will modify that content, and then your workflow continues. After you modify the content, you push that to the repository, maybe you publish, and so on, right? But at some point you need to modify the content. And at this point, you usually have the document open in an authoring tool, in an editing tool, and you perform some changes. You can do that yourself. But if you want to get feedback from somebody else, maybe if you are a technical writer, from a developer that worked on that feature that you are documenting, what can you do? You can write him an email, maybe you can call him on the phone and ask him a question, and as he says, you can type that in, right? So it's a form of collaboration, and you can do that, and you will modify the document, and you continue your workflow. So at this point, having the web author and all that infrastructure, we wanted to build on top of that to make it easier for someone that needs to modify that content but needs help from somebody else to do that, to actually enable this. So when you have that content in front of you, you can share one or more documents, then have other people access those documents easily without any installation, just by following a link, and then be able to integrate their changes back into your document. So you can modify that content yourself, or you can get other people to propose changes or to you, and you can decide what you take from those changes and you put in the actual content, and you continue your workflow. So this is what we try to do with this solution, which is called Oxygen Content Fusion, which provides collaboration on XML content using a browser, and is built on top of the web author, and provides by default data, docbook, XHTML, any XML basically can be supported, any XML format. Some of the reasons I already mentioned. I don't think anyone can work alone, without any interaction with other people. So there is a clear need to collaborate. And as a technical writer, you may have access to specific tools, XML tools, or but the people that you want to collaborate with, they may not have a license for those tools, right? So, and in general, if they are engineers or they may be outside of your company, you cannot afford to buy a license for them, especially if they need to interact with that content once a year or just now, never again. They may not have rights to your repository, or they may not be part of your workflow. So they may not have access to the CMS or to the Git repository, for instance. They may not be allowed to do that. Another reason may be that you do not want them to push changes directly on that repository, because you want to be in control of everything that goes into that repository, for instance, right? So you want to check the content before it reaches the repository. And another reason for this collaboration platform that we created was to enable also a less formal way of receiving feedback, like a peer-to-peer, maybe from a technical writer to another technical writer. If you are a junior, let's say, and you want someone to just look over what you did before it's visible by anyone, and it's a revision in the repository, and then everyone can see that, right? And we try to make it so we spent probably 2-3 months only discussing and cutting off ideas to stay as simple as possible. So we try to simplify from the author's perspective the process to 3 steps. So you create a task that contains the resources that you want to make available, that you want to share. Then you obtain the URL and you provide that to the people that you want to collaborate with. And then you get their changes and integrate them back into the original content that you used to start all this process. From the contributor's perspective, they just follow a link, make some changes, and eventually they can say, okay, I'm done with this. So you can get a notification that they don't need more work. That's in a way optional. You can integrate the changes at any time if you want to. And for this we have, so Oxygen is available as a desktop tool. And in this tool we created a plugin to this contribution platform that connects Oxygen to this contribution platform. So basically it is possible to have also other tools like a CMS or another editor connect to the platform. Or you can have a process. So let's say when you commit on the repository, you take the modified files and create a task with those, let's say, 2 modified files. Someone can go and review those changes on the platform. An example. So, but right now we have a connector for the desktop version that implements those steps, and the service itself. So create, share, integrate, these are the 3 steps that we need to take, and I'll show you a few examples so you can get the idea of how that works. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me at any time. Oh. So this is the desktop version of Oxygen, and here we have a data map with a few topics. We can open such a topic. It's information about phones, let's say X1000, X2000. It's one of the samples that we have in our with our product. If I want to provide, let's say, these files to an engineer for review, to check the technical specifications, for instance. If this stays in my repository, and they need XML tools, and how can I do that? The challenge was, how can I do that in less than a minute or something like that? So what we can do in Oxygen is that when you click on this Fusion plugin, you get this side view, which has this placeholder for creating a new task. If I just drag and drop the file here, it says it has additional resources. Do you want to include them? Yes. And I can just provide a name for this task, like review. You see? So we have the files. It automatically detected that it's a data map for context. If you have keys or additional resources, and then you can say upload. And that will upload the task on the Content Fusion platform. And if I click on this, I get to the in the browser. I can see the task, and I have different settings, like I want to enforce track changes on or not, depending on how I want to control what the reviewers will, what the changes from the reviewers will be recorded with track change information, or I don't care about that. We keep also the structure of the topics from the data map, so you see the indenting here. And sorry, let's go back just one moment. And the share gives me access to the URL that I can provide to somebody else. If they follow this URL, then they will be able to see something like this. And it's the same file that you've seen here. Now it's available in the browser, just a click away for a reviewer, let's say. So let's say they say mobile phone here, right? Make some corrections. I don't know, they may correct, let's say they may say this is 1200, not 1280, something like that. And now the reviewer also has a message here that says done. I'm done with this task. Probably Christy will show later on the reviewer's perspective, and I will share a task with him. But back so I can click also to another file and see the content of that file, so I can just move between them. Back in Oxygen, you see it says one file changed. And when I say get changes, so now I'm back to the author perspective. I can just say get changes, and Oxygen will show me what has changed in the file. So I can see mobile here was added and the correction here, and it says that this can be automatically merged. So I don't need to do anything. This is just a preview, so I can see if I want to what's changed. The only things that will be interesting, or I need to do some action, if there is a conflict, if I made some changes locally exactly in those places. Let me cancel this. But Oxygen has, so if I do something, a change here, for instance, for, let's say I remove more from demanding users, right? And I save, and now I integrate the changes. So I changed my local version, somebody changed the remote. If I say get changes, you can see this still says automatically merge. The file can be automatically merged because my changes, let's look, are here. You see this more, which is missing, but it's in a different part of the document, and we have an XML aware merge tool, three-way, because we keep the ancestor, so we know exactly what changed. So we still can merge those changes automatically. So then you can just say, okay, just get those changes, and you have those changes here with track change information. You can say accept all if you want to, or you can also go through all of the changes and accept, reject them individually if you want to. But that depends on your requirements, because you may decide, that you don't want to track changes in the first place, and then you manage when you get the changes, then you see exactly what was done, and then that's your approval process directly there. So it's that simple. So that's Content Fusion, allows you to obtain a URL immediately. In a few seconds you can just obtain a URL and you can share that with somebody. Yes?
How robust is this for traversing a lot of indirectness? Keys and key refs and the whole layers deep. Is it able to pull that context together?
So what we do is that Oxygen has an export data map feature, and when you use a map as the context, we actually export the data map and we upload all the content on the Fusion platform, and then you have basically all the key scopes, all the resources available. Everything is there, and the web editor is full data editor. Yes?
Can I change these resources, these read-only resources, like the keys and everything, if I want to make changes there? Is that provided in the background?
So you want to change what?
The keys, for instance, if I want to
we have you can change anything from the data map, but it depends also on so right now I think we allow users to change the entry points from the task, the topics that you set as entry points, and they are actually, because if you have a map with 2000 topics, you want them to see the 3 topics that they should review, not all the 1000 topics. They can still navigate, I think, between I don't know if these have links.
You can try to insert cross-reference in one of the files.
Yeah, maybe later for another example. Yeah, so it depends on the policy in the end, whether you want someone to make changes everywhere, but you still have control when you get changes, what you accept, basically. But if you have, like 20 files, it would be difficult for you to remember which are the 20 files that you set as the context and if someone changes in some other part, maybe, I don't know.
But I might want to do the whole
Yeah, you can do that.
lot of chapters.
Yeah, you can do that. Actually, our technical writer uses Content Fusion. He said almost exclusively for interacting with our developers. And our user guide is available on GitHub. It has close to 2,000 topics, and we have about 40 data maps. So it's one big data map. It's the same data map generates about 27 different deliverables for 9 products. So we use profiling, we use keys, and all that. Another use case will be, for instance, if I want someone to be forced to make changes only to this part of the document, to the camera section. I can so we have support that allows from the CSS to say the entire document is not editable and the camera entry is editable, for instance, and make everything like gray and this make it with a white background. And with the media we can say that only when it's in the web editor will be this restriction. And now if I refer to this CSS in this topic, then in the web this will be restricted according to those rules. So now if I make this available and I have a feature request for Christian to automatically determine also the CSS that is referred. So if I upload this and I call this restrict, then when a user will enter on this topic in the Fusion platform, you see when they try to make changes here, it says read only content. You cannot change here. And the only thing that's available is this part, right? So you can kind of control when you share a document, you can control and say only this part is available. You can also say display hidden, and you can hide completely some parts of the document, so they even cannot see it. Right, so let's say it's 12 megapixels here or something like that. And then back in Oxygen again I can say get changes, and I will be able to see what changed and bring those changes back. Just say apply, and then I have those changes back into my document, and I can continue commit or whatever workflow I was using in my desktop. The third scenario is we can control with these processing instructions. I can give direct instructions to the author, like enter screen size in inch, like digit.digit inch or something like that, or whatever message I want to put here. This will be presented to the user, you see here, and as I type something like 10.1, let's say, that processing instruction disappears from the document, so it's to not be saved further, right? So these processing instructions are good for creating templates where you want to provide specific instructions to somebody, right? So that's another possibility. So I can let's say create a task like a contribution task. It's a new type of phone, and Okay, share, copy, done. Sorry. Link. Paste. And let me put my Gmail account so I don't need to VPN into the office network, so I can send this to my colleague Christy. And we can play around a bit until he updates that topic. So you see that here we can see that the topic is locked, and I can see Christy when he was traveling in the mountains, his user icon, right? So if I enter now on this topic, it says Christy Talo is currently editing this file, and it's read-only for me. When he will release the file, it will be available for me. So we implemented this automatic locking to avoid conflicts on the platform, and we plan to work also on more collaborative editing, allowing more people to actually edit the same file in the same time. We'll see. But still, this gives you, you know that Christy is working on the file. Maybe if you have 3 topics, you can work on another one until he finishes.
Can you also switch profiling attributes and just to see different values depending on my filters? Document without profiling.
Yes, that also works, and I will show an example in a meeting. Christy finished review the document. There's no icon here, right? So somehow, when we have one file changed, we can say get changes, and I can see the values added by Christian to that file. So all the placeholders disappear, and I can say apply, and I get that initial contribution. So if you have like a template and you want to provide that to an engineer or to some other subject matter expert to give you the initial content, then you can also control with this placeholder information, direct them what you expect them to provide in different parts of the document. Any other questions about Fusion? So this is freely available right now for Oxygen users. You can just install the Content Fusion plugin from like going to help, install new add-ons. Then here you have the default update site. If you select that, then you have Oxygen Content Fusion connector. Is disabled because it's already installed in my case. But then you can just follow the next to install that, and that will give you this icon. Initially it will be like this. I disconnected now, so you can connect to the public server that we have, fusion.oxygenxml.com, or if you can get Fusion on premise, install it on your company network, and then you can connect to the URL that someone will provide you. When I say connect, Fusion asks me to authorize the application, the Oxygen application, to be able to send tasks. And now I'm connected, and I already see my tasks here. It will ask you to log in with GitHub or Google account, or you can set up your own account on the platform. Yeah. And here it's an overview of, so you can, it's not linked to data. You can also drop a docu file or any XML file basically. But for data, there is this special support with the data map that provides the context for editing, like keys and different values. So there can be multiple reviewers or contributors accessing the files with this automatic locking, unlocking functionality that we provide. Track changes, comments, highlights. I didn't use the comments and reply to comments, so you can have comment threads. The visual XML aware three-way merge. In the last version, so we released in the end of September, so about 1 month ago, we had this three-way diff, but it was in the text mode, and it was not that user-friendly. But in the outer mode, as you've seen, you don't see the processing instructions for track changes, for instance. You just see the actual changes, and it's a lot easier to work with. And we also have a number of so if I go here to my profile, I can see, I can control what notifications I receive by email, for instance, when someone finalizes a review, or whenever, what are the important events when I want to be notified. So that's the first part with the Content Fusion. What do you think about that? It's useful? For the on-premise installation, right now we do not charge for Content Fusion if you have web author licenses. You can just connect Fusion to the web author and just use the same pool of floating licenses, web author licenses. And in the future, for the hosted Content Fusion, we are thinking to have a subscription for the authors and free access for reviewers. And the subscription for the authors will be $28 per month, but no cost for reviewers, because I guess as an author, you don't expect, if I send you a link, to pay for accessing that, right? So that was our idea about the hosted version. But then you can take it on premise, and then you can control everything, and just use it with the web author, which at its turn enables and optimizes a number of workflows for collaboration. And I will try to go into some of those workflows. In general, these workflows are created by connecting different services, different distributed services, like storage, versioning, publishing, communication, continuous integration services. But and we provide with the web author XML authoring also as another service. For storage, you have GitHub, for instance, or another repository. For publishing, you may have a web help system or a PDF, or I don't know, a publishing platform to which you can push content. And what it means, XML authoring offered as a distributed service. It means that the web author is not just an application that you start, rather than starting the desktop, you start the browser, and then you go to a URL, and then that's your application. It means that the application is a service, and you can invoke that service passing it parameters. So here you can say the base URL for the service is this, and then you say the URL to the file that I want to edit is this one, and the DTAMA for context is this one, and I don't know, something else, let's say. And I want the tags to be visible to the user, to see the full tags, or not only the text, the rendered document. So this is how the web author works. And that means that you can use a URL to access the authoring service. You can open the web editor to edit any file just by a URL. What does actually means? It means that, for instance, let's say our technical support, or in general technical support team will review your documentation. How? a customer will ask a question, and at some point when they read the question, they will look into the user guide to see, does the user guide actually respond to that question or not. When they read the topic from your user guide, they are reviewing it, and not only reviewing it because that's their task to review it. They review it in a real life situation with a real user with a real problem. So it's a very important review process. And you can just throw that away or you can use it. But if you want to use it to continuously improve your documentation, right? You need to make it easy for them to give you those improvements. And the way that we use for that is that we provide a URL in that topic that they read from the user guide that they can just click to obtain the source of the topic, so they can edit that and provide the suggested changes. For instance, they can see that the procedure is missing a step because the user tried to follow that and they were not able to follow that, and they can see, oh, it's missing this step, sorry, we need to add that to the documentation. If they just reply by email to the user and then nothing happens, your documentation will remain still without that missing step, and next user that will try that procedure will get into the same problem and again, right? So let me show you how that actually looks like on our website. So if you go to our website under documentation, we have the Oxygen XML editor web help, and here if I try to, ask me about something in Oxygen. Markdown? Or Markdown? Everyone last. Markdown. Markdown editing, let's say. The network is not that fast, but so let's say actions available in the Markdown editor, and you ask me for a validation action, and maybe we have it, but it's not here, right? It's not documented here. I have this edit button here, and I can just hit edit, and the web author will open, and if you look here, it's the base URL for the service that I mentioned earlier, and it says URL equals, and it points, well, it's URL encoded, this information. It's GitHub column / so those percent something, it's column / and points to the Oxygen XML project on user guide, Oxygen XML user on GitHub, the user guide project, master branch, data folder, topics, markdown actions.data, and then says and data map equals, and provides the user guide data map as the context for editing. And this is the published document, this is the source. I can just go, and add here maybe a new entry, validate, or an icon, validate icon, and then validate. There's no validation for Mac. Validate the document, right? Let's say, and then I just hit save, and I provide, added the validate action. I will not commit on the master branch. I will commit on a new branch. If I didn't have rights to the repository, it will ask me to fork. I will just accept to fork the repository and send a pull request. So someone will be able to suggest you a change. And then if you are the owner, you will see the pull request and say accept or reject that change. And now, so this is our user guide. Now this version will switch to the new branch. So additional change that I make will go to that branch. If it's a pull request, that pull request will be updated live. And if we go to GitHub, Oxygen XML user guide. You see the master patch Tekom branch less than a minute ago. Created, I can say, compare and pull request to send the pull request to against the master branch. You know, I can just do this, and then I see the changes that I made here, right? And everything is live and immediate. Yeah, so, yeah, look here, it was also in Markdown and diff. We didn't talk. Where was that file? And here you can see the product key resolved to Oxygen XML editor. And here you can see the profiling part, right? This says if product is author editor author eclipse or editor eclipse, right? So you have the profiling part also visible here. Yeah, so that's one use case. Another one is, so that's continuous improvement of the documentation, but how do you create the documentation in the first place? As a software company, we create the documentation after we create a new functionality in the product. And that new functionality in the product is tracked through an issue tracking system. So we record first, there's a new feature request, we describe what should be created, then we analyze what that means, and then eventually a developer will get to work on that and it will implement the fix, that feature. And then that feature will be code reviewed, will be tested by the QA team, we'll check that unit tests are made and so on and so on. And at some point it's verified and you know it's implemented and everything is fine. Then it goes to the documentation team to see if there are any changes that needs to be done inside the documentation to reflect that new feature. Everything that we change, we code that issue ID in the messages, in the commit messages. So now the documentation team will make changes to the documentation. Who is the best person to review those changes from a technical perspective? The developer that worked, he was involved on that feature. How do you determine that developer to, you know, review how the feature is documented in the user guide? If you ask him to do that, you know, like in 3 months when we are about to release and the user guide is ready, and to find, you know, where in the user guide are those changes? Is that feature documented in maybe 2,000 pages? It will be very difficult. So what we do is that when the technical writer commits and codes the issue ID, we see that there are 2 topics modified. And we inject a message in Jira automatically with a script that provides links to those topics with a web author to edit those topics. So what the what the developer sees, you know, sees that so this the web author review bot is a script that Christy created. It's 1 page that checks commits on GitHub, where we have our documentation repository, and creates this message that goes by email to the developer or to the people that listen on that issue, that follow that issue on Jira, and also to the issue itself. And the developer only needs to click on that link to see the topic. You know, that's it. And you cannot close the issue until the documentation is verified. So it's part of the workflow. I will not show you this live because I need to VPN into our office to get access to the Jira. But here it's our screenshots from, it's the same thing as we've seen earlier. It's the same documentation, basically. Only this is on the private Git repository, because as we develop, we have two repositories. The public one, which shows the released version of the documentation, and as we develop towards the next version, we develop on a private clone of the repository. The private becomes the public when you release, in 3 months, in 6 months, whenever. Because we do not want our competition to see, everything that we add the day we add it, or, So that's the only difference. This goes to the private repo. And you can see also the changes with GitHub, but they are better seen with our diff tools in terms of XML. And another challenge is review. Reviewing, which is done usually on PDF, for instance, or in some case on HTML output. And when you discover a problem, what do? You can try to review directly on the XML source, but reviewers will be reluctant to that. So I sketched some time ago the review process, like the classical review where you have XML, you get PDF, then you get comments on that PDF. So you get the annotated PDF with a lot of comments, and then you need to act on those comments. But the PDF is actually the result of 1,000 XML documents. And it's very difficult when you are, at page 258 to see from which XML document that came from, so I can act on that comment and fix the problem. And that's usually a manual process and a lot of work. Direct XML review that I proposed some time ago was, you can just open the XML file, the map, for instance, in the web author, and follow the links, and everything that you do are comments or changes. We track changes maybe which are directly on the XML content, but people didn't took that. So rather than this, I propose something else. So you have the XML, you generate the PDF, but then rather than continue like this, the PDF, each topic from the PDF will contain an edit link. So if you read the PDF and you discover a problem in some part, you can just say edit, and you get to the content of that topic in the web editor and propose the changes there, and then you have the changes in the source. Yeah, this works quite well, and you record all the changes or all the comments directly on the XML source. So then you can very easily, you don't need to align, you don't need to do anything. You can go through them and accept, reject them if you want. And we provide, for the web, actually we provide one Data Open Toolkit plugin, which creates these edit links on HTML-based output, any HTML-based output, and on PDF-based output. So you can, in the PDF, it looks like this. Edit online, you have on a topic, and you have this edit online button, which gives you access exactly to that topic. Let me see if I have, I published one, I think, for a conference at some point. 7. No, I have one. Yeah, so I published one such user guide. Let's find a topic. You see, like this topic, if I find a problem, view preferences, I can just say edit online, and this will open the web editor on that topic from the PDF, right? So you can see it's basically I can access the content of that topic, including the metadata or whatever it's in that source, just by following the link from the PDF. And every topic message preferences has an edit online link. If I click on this, it will open that topic and so on. Yeah. Right? So you have, this immediate access to the source file. Just by injecting the link, so you can imagine in your company, wherever you can put a URL, you can have this shortcut where they can directly access the XML source and provide some feedback or corrections or comments or whatever. Another use case is enabling crowdsourcing documentation. And Data Open Toolkit documentation right now uses GitHub for storage versioning, access control, GitHub Pages for publishing, Travis to automate builds, and Slack. And if we add the web author, they include an edit this page link for the Data OT documentation. So especially for open source projects, it's quite useful to have this. And here is a dialog where you can see the pull request. If you do not have access, it will fork and create a pull request automatically with the changes that you propose. This is an example with the docu used as the source for this website. So any page here, it's a docu source, and it's generated from docu. And we have this edit this on GitHub, and you see here GitHub, and it says you don't have write access to this file, right? So if I make a change here and I try to save, it says that it will fork. It will create a new branch in my fork of the repository, and I can choose to create a pull request. Right, so this is a repository where I do not have access. So I didn't create a pull request, right? But I just commit it so you can see that I can still commit, and it will go in my fork of the repository. So now it's georgebinaexproc.org, and I have the changes that I made here. Right, and now if I check that, the original project also had the pull request, so they can say just accept that. And then another example that I have here is a project that it's also available on GitHub, and uses makes available all the scripts and everything to show. This is the Oxygen web help output, and this is a lightweight data topic, and we can edit this topic. If I click edit, it opens in the web author. And for lightweight data, we used some of the ideas for controlling the authoring experience. So here, if I click on this or tap, if I'm on a mobile device, I can see the most common structures that I can add, or say points, and then enter a definition list, for instance. What am I supposed to do here? I have this information button, and I can get a description of what I'm supposed to do here. Right? Here I have a cross-reference. This is lightweight data, and this is our support, our cast for editing lightweight data. I can go, to the side view and look at the attributes. Sorry, I just closed it, and edit the href and so on and so on. But rather than that, I can just click on this edit button here, and I get all the attributes directly in the document. Yeah, let me just make a change here, a Tekom, save, test, and commit that. and that will automatically trigger the process that rebuilds the website. So basically with this you can turn any XML based website in a wiki-like experience. This uses a continuous integration server called Travis, which integrates with GitHub. Oh, this is 3 hours ago. Oh, shit. At some point, Travis will pick up, that commit, and it will start to rebuild the website, and you will get lightweight data Tekom published here. The project is available on GitHub. George Bina, GitHub Data Wiki. Well, it's available also on the slides. And here you have, you can just clone this and you can obtain the same functionality if you follow the instructions on your own project. And I have a description on the slides here that shows more about how that works, a diagram and so on. So a few conclusions are that the content fusion is a very simple way to basically that enables you to make XML content available to anyone because they just need to follow a link. So the requirements on their site is, and that works also on my phone. It works on any device. So the web author and the content fusion work very well on a phone or on a tablet, not only on desktop. And the web author, don't think about web author as a desktop tool that works in the browser, like an XML editor working in the browser. Think about what it enables. The fact that you can trigger that just through a link, and you can inject that link in so many places, everywhere basically, and then you can improve or create new workflows that will cut a number of steps that you waste time right now. And you've seen that basically any XML based system can be turned into a wiki, like everything becomes editable with these links, right? And if you integrate automatic publishing, then you have a wiki-like experience for XML-based systems. So, thank you, and I hope you found this useful.